In the old Western movies, it was really easy to tell who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. The bad guys, well, they would do this, right? They would wear the black hats. And then the good guys, well, they would wear white hats. Well, we don't do this anymore, but it's still pretty easy to tell the difference. Like this. Superman. White hat or black hat? I mean, let me ask you this with Superman. Do you have a favorite Superman, actor? Because I do. My favorite Superman is Henry Cavill. Here's the reason. He's like the only Superman that knows how to wear his red undies on the inside. I'm like, thank you, Henry. So Superman, what do you think? Black hat or white hat? Yeah, white hat. Okay, well, how about this guy? What do we do with this one? Kids, that is why we brush our teeth. Okay? Well, Voldemort, what do you think? Black hat or white hat? Black hat. Yeah, this is really pretty simple. Well, how about this guy? What do we do with Mufasa? Hold on. I know there's a lot of love in this room for Mufasa, but technically, Mufasa is a cat. I'm tempted, but I suppose we can give Mufasa a white hat. Well, here's what we do at the Ridge. We teach through the books in the Bible. And currently, we're teaching through the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. We're calling it this. The series is called Rise and Fall, the story of Solomon. Today, we get to chapter 2. And I'll say this, 1 Kings chapter 2 is, well, it's a black hat chapter in the Bible. And I say that because 1 Kings chapter 2, it's filled with things like this. Verse 25. King Solomon gave orders to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he struck down Adonijah, and he died. I read things like this in chapter 2, and I think, man, Solomon, he's like going all John Wick on us here. He's killing people left and right. And I think 1 Kings chapter 2, this is actually a pretty difficult read for us today. We need to understand a few things. One of the things we need to understand is that these people that Solomon in chapter 2 is taking out, they didn't just merely disagree with his policies. They were committing some serious crimes. And as king, it was Solomon's job to administrate justice in the kingdom. Actually, it was his responsibility. So there are 3 people on the 1 Kings chapter 2 hit list as Solomon begins to establish his kingdom. Number 1 was Adonijah. We looked at him last week. Number 2 is a guy by the name of Shimei. We will get to him next time. Today we are going to focus in on chapter 2, verses 28 through 35, which is all about this guy, Joab. Have you heard of him? See, Joab, the Bible tells us more about this guy Joab than Adam. More about Joab than Noah. More about Joab than Jonah. But Joab tends to get overlooked because it's pretty difficult to know what to do with this guy. Is he this? White hat? Or is he this? Black hat? Is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? Well, let's back up. Chapter 2 begins with David telling Solomon this. Verse 5, David says to Solomon, "Now, you yourself know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did." Well, we're going to get to what he did, but first, notice how Joab is introduced. Now, you yourself know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did. Son of Zeruiah. Well, who's Zeruiah? My guess, when I'm reading this, I'm like, well, that's probably Joab's dad. Wrong. Ends up, Zeruiah is Joab's mom. Odd. Why would Joab be associated with his mom in a patriarchal society? Here's why. Because his mom, Zeruiah, she was a bit of a rock star. People knew her. See, Zeruiah, she was King David's sister. That makes Joab David's nephew, and not just a nephew. 1 Samuel 22, verse 1, David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down there to him. See, Joab isn't specifically mentioned in that passage by name, but it is widely thought that Joab was one of these few loyal followers who stuck by David when David was in crisis. See, Joab, this guy was in David's family, and he was also David's friend. So, which is that? Is that black hat or is that white hat? That's white hat. That's a good thing. Would it distract you if I wore this? There it is. Yeehaw. If it's distracting, deal with it. It's a visual aid. Okay? $3.99 at the Oriental Trading Company. 2 Samuel, chapter 20, we encounter this same guy, Joab, again. David, here's the context, he has just had that infamous affair with Bathsheba, and he tries to cover the whole thing up by getting rid of her husband Uriah. Well, how's he going to do that? What's David's plan? Well, David's plan is this. Joab. Verse 14. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so he will be struck down and die." See, David infamously came up with this plan, but did you know who it was that executed it? It wasn't David. The person who executed it was this guy, Joab. Is that this white hat, or is that more of this? Yeah, it's black hat. That's a black hat thing. That's a Joab, and what he's doing is unjust. What he's doing is wrong. He's abusing power. Well, why did Joab do that? Well, Joab did that because he was compliant. Joab knew. He knew Uriah was a good dude. He knew that was wrong, but he did what he did because he didn't want to cross David. He was compliant. Anybody else have that tendency? Well, these guys do, right? Chameleons. These are sneaky little lizards that change colors just to blend in. And that's a nice little trick for a lizard, but not for a follower of Jesus. Do you realize that we live in a culture that in many ways teaches the exact opposite of what Jesus taught? Exact opposite. I mean, culture says, well, love things. Jesus says, love people. Culture says, get. Jesus said, give. Culture says, seek happiness. Jesus says, well, seek holiness. Culture says, demand your rights. Jesus says, lay down your rights to help others. If we are truly going to follow this Jesus, then we can't do what everybody else does. We're going to need to discern how the ways of this world around us deviate from his ways. Paul puts it this way, Romans 12, verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind? How are you doing with that? Or how about tomorrow? Kids, like when you go back to school, how will you be doing with it then? What Paul is saying is, are you any different? Or are you like this guy Joab and you just kind of blend in? Does anyone know? Does anyone know that you are a follower of Jesus? Are your values different? Are your priorities different? Is your life different? If following Jesus doesn't alter your life, then you really need to ask, am I really following Jesus? Well, 1 Chronicles chapter 11 gives us another angle on Joab. Verse 4, David and all the Israelites marched to Jerusalem, that is Jebus, and the Jebusites who lived there said to David, you will not get in here. Well, David, he wanted Jerusalem. He wanted Jerusalem to be his capital. It was already occupied. What's he do? Verse 6, David had said, whoever leads the attack on the Jebusites will become commander-in-chief. Any guesses who it was that rallied David's men to take the city of Jerusalem? This guy. It was Joab. After defeating the Jebusites, David appointed Joab to be the commander of the army. It's believed that Joab never lost a battle. That Joab played one of the most pivotal roles in establishing Israel as a powerful kingdom, in building up David's dynasty. Joab, he was a brave military leader. Is that this black hat, or is that this white hat? I'd say that one is more of a white hat, right? I mean, courage in battle. Courage isn't just the absence of fear. Courage is believing that something else is more important. This is God's way of saying to us, well, how about you? What challenge are you facing in life today? Don't just hide from it. Face it. Because you can't conquer Jerusalem if you don't take the field. You can't resolve the tension if you don't have that honest, difficult conversation. You can't overcome that habit if you don't admit you actually have a problem. Hear what it is that God said to Joshua when he was facing a challenge. Joshua 1 verse 9. God said, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you. For the Lord your God will be with you. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Don't give up. Don't lose hope. Because your greatest challenge, it may very well be your greatest opportunity. Well, 2 Samuel chapter 20. After an attempted coup, David, he wants to reunite the nation by appointing this guy called Amasa to be the head of the army. Well, Joab, same Joab we've been talking about here, he didn't like that, and he requested a private meeting with this guy, Amasa. Here's what happens. Verse 9, Joab said to Amasa, how are you, my brother? Then Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. That's Joab's way of pretending to be a buddy, but then he does this. The passage continues. Amasa was not on his guard against the dagger in Joab's hand. And Joab plunged it into his belly, and his intestines spilled out on the ground. Without being stabbed again, Amasa died. Graphic enough for you? Well, that's not Joab's only felony. We also get this, 2 Samuel 3, verse 27. Now when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into an inner chamber as if to speak with him privately. And there, to avenge the blood of his brother Ashel, Joab stabbed him in the stomach and he died. Is that white hat or is that black hat? Yes, that's black hat. Black hat or white hat, good guy or bad guy? You know, one of my very favorite superheroes is this guy, Batman. You know, Batman, do you ever notice something about Batman? Batman, when he's doing his crime fighting, he only fights crime at night. They go, why is that? I'm thinking maybe the reason that is because if he were to fight crime during the day, Batman, he would end up with some very obnoxious tan lines. Be pretty obvious who Batman is. But Batman, I like Batman. But what do you think? Batman, black hat or white hat? Which is Batman? Because I think, for Batman can be, he calls standing on top of a building, dropping a criminal off the top of it to his death. Batman calls that another day at the office. Is that this, white, or is that black? Or how about this? Batman, he's a billionaire. But this guy, he doesn't use his resources to help the poor. Rather, he buys really cool outfits and Batmobiles. Joker put it this way. He said, where does he get all those wonderful toys? I'll tell you where he gets all those wonderful toys. He buys them. That's where he gets them. Well, what is that? Is that a black hat or is that a white hat? See, I think when it comes to Batman, he doesn't fit. He doesn't fit the white hat, black hat principle. He's not white hat, he's not black hat. Batman, he's a little bit of both. Same thing with this guy Joab. Right? We get his stories in the Bible and we're not sure what to do with it. We get, okay, he starts out and Joab, he's friends with David. He's there, he supports David. You say, well, white hat. Then he's the one who sends Uriah to his death. Black hat. He's a courageous, a leader. White hat. He murders 2 guys. Black hat. See, Joab, he's not white hat, he's not black hat. This guy, he's a little bit of both. And I think that's not just Joab. I think that's me. I think maybe that's you. I think that's all of us. Because when we get right down to it, there really only is one purely white hat person, Jesus. Jesus, he's the only one. He's the only one with zero black hat behavior because he is God. He's the only one who went through life without any sin, which is what makes his sacrifice on the cross so deeply powerful. Paul puts it this way, Colossians 2, verse 13, he says, when you were dead in your sins and in the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made you alive with Christ. He forgave us all our sins, having canceled the charge of our legal indebtedness, which stood against us and condemned us. He has taken it away, nailing it to the cross. Well, one last fascinating story in 1 Kings chapter 2. King David, he was on his deathbed. And he let it be known that Solomon was to be the next king. Well, this guy Joab, he didn't like that. And so he decided to lead the charge to make Adonijah the king. Joab was leading that. Hear what happens when Solomon is declared king. Verse 28, when the news reached Joab, who had conspired with Adonijah, though not with Absalom, he fled to the tent of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. Well, why did Joab do that? He did that because his decision to support Adonijah, that was an act of treason. Did you notice specifically what Joab did? Where Joab went? Joab, in that moment, he went to the tabernacle and he grabbed onto the altar. In this moment of crisis, Joab, here's what he did. He fled to the church. He fled to the Lord. And so what happens? Well, this is the Bible, so we know what's going to happen. Right? I mean, Solomon grants him mercy. Joab is forgiven and his life is forever changed. Wrong. Verse 29. King Solomon was told that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord and was beside the altar. Then Solomon ordered Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, go strike him down. Joab wasn't rescued. Joab, this guy was executed. He was executed right there in the temple, holding on to the altar of the Lord. What do we do with this? What do you do with a story like this in the Bible? Ignore it? Move on to chapter 3? We could do that, but if we do that, then we are going to miss what God is saying right here in chapter 2. Fascinating thing. In all of these passages with Joab, nowhere in any of them do we get even a semblance of Joab having a relationship with the Lord. In none of them. But here, in this moment of crisis, as a very last resort, Joab went into the tabernacle, clung on to the altar of the God he had heard about, but not bothered to develop a relationship with. See, the center of Christianity, it's not a tabernacle. It's not the horns of the altar. It's not a service. It's not a set of ethical beliefs. The center of Christianity is an invitation into a relationship with the one and only God through his Son, Jesus. If your idea of a relationship with God is kind of along the lines of Joab, an occasional church service, something along those lines, if that's your idea of a relationship with God, you are missing out. You're missing out. Because there is so much more that is available. The story of Jesus, it doesn't end on that cross. On the third day, resurrection, resurrection, resurrection. He's alive, Power, authority, hope. And this Jesus, he wants a relationship with you. He wants to talk with you. He wants to share with you. He wants to guide you. He wants to help you. He wants to protect you. He wants to give you wisdom. He wants to give you purpose. Say, well, how? How do I get in on that? Well, start maybe by getting a Bible. Study his teachings. Do what he says. Take a class. Serve on a team. Join a group. Get to know some of his other followers. I mean, Dane talked about this on the video, the connection guide. You'll be getting these in the mail, or if you don't, there's a bunch of them out on the Welcome Center. There is not a time in the whole church year that's easier to get involved than this time right now. Because there are so many opportunities and so many things that are just going to begin. Pick one. Say, I don't want to spend my life like Joab, not really knowing God, just kind of knowing about him. And then when there's a crisis, I run and I try and go to the altar. Develop a relationship with him. Pick one way. What's one way that I can do that in the season ahead? And then remember what Joab kind of forgot. You can talk to God. You can talk to him. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be formal. You can tell him whatever is on your heart all throughout the day. We can have a relationship with God. Well, 1 Kings chapter 2, Joab. You know, the Bible tells us more about Joab than Adam, more about Joab than Noah, more about Joab than, well, a lot of people in the Bible. You say, well, why? Well, why don't we know more about him? We don't know more about him because we don't really know what to do with this guy. Black hat or white hat? Is he a good guy or a bad guy? Which is Joab? Which are you? Which hat would you say you tend to wear? You know, for me, it's not that clean. For me, it's not that simple. Which is why Christianity is such good news for a guy like me. Because the gospel isn't Jesus, he came to this earth, he told us how to live, and then if we live a pretty good life, when we die, well, God will give us what we deserve. No, that's not the gospel. The gospel is this. I've got a little of this in me. And so Jesus, he came to this earth and he sacrificed his life to take away my shortcomings, to take away my sin, to do something along the lines of this. Right? This is the gospel. This is what Jesus has done. When we get this, when we really get this, when we fully understand this, it changes things. We don't have to go through life trying to be good enough. We don't have to go through life trying to be worthy enough. We can be filled with joy because we recognize Jesus, he is good enough. Well, if that's the way it works, why would anyone follow him? Why would anyone follow his ways? Why would anyone go to all the work of orienting their life around him? Here's why. Because our choices, our decisions, our lives, that is a way that you and I can say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.